Professor Phil Goodwin, are we noticing the difference in long-run trends in travel demand over different population groups, or are there breakdowns that are different within the population?
It varies a bit from country to country, but there's some common themes that we've been discussing which were a bit surprising. The group which has reduced its orientation towards car the most, surprisingly, is young men. They were the driver of traffic growth, as when people past 16 or 17, depending on the laws in the country, the first thing they wanted to do was get their driving licence, and the second thing they wanted to do was get a car. This was the rite of passage into adulthood. This was the proof that you were grown up. It was more important to many young men than losing their virginity. And yet now they are the group who are reducing their tendency, their desire to get licences. There's still a majority who get licences, but it's not so urgent, it's not so important, and it's not everybody. The second group, which is really very interesting in some countries, it's the richer income groups who actually drive cars the most, who have reduced their car use the most as well. And the reason for that seems to be that it's easier, if you're rich, to find your way to a less car-dependent lifestyle if you want to do so. The new thing is some of them want to do so, which they didn't before. And the third main group are people who live in cities, especially big cities, dense areas, in the inner cities and the places where the public transport is best and cycling facilities are best and so on. That's not surprising, but that's where we see in many of the most successful, rich, prosperous cities in Europe, reductions in car use.
Professor Goodwin, what are the policy implications that can be drawn, if any, from this trend, long-run trend in travel demand?
Well, of course, people argue a lot about what transport policies are best, and they still argue what transport policies are best, whether the car traffic is increasing or not. It does seem that we've got to be very, very careful now about the big, expensive new roads projects, because in some cases at least it looks as though the traffic forecasts which have been used to justify them are less likely to appear. And in that case you may find that we're spending money, too much money on the wrong projects in the wrong place at the wrong time. The consequence for public transport is a bit different. If car use continues to grow, then we do of course need improvements in public transport to counter some of the environmental and congestion effects of increased traffic. If car use does not continue to grow, then the case for public transport improvements is different. People have got to travel one way or the other, and they will want better public transport facilities. But in that case, the public transport improvements may well pay for themselves rather than needing public subsidy. So you do have a different policy pressure in that case.
Professor Goodwin, thank you very much.
Thank you.